2 overtime restarts, and 2 consecutive wins for William Byron. Let's talk about NASCAR in the Phoenix Desert. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in the Phoenix Desert. William Byron gets his second consecutive win, both of those wins coming on overtime restarts, and let's talk about how William Byron was able to get it done once again on the final restart. We'll go ahead and get on into that. We'll go through the finishing orders, obviously. We'll talk about this new aero package, this new lower downforce package that we saw today at Phoenix. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it. I want to start out by saying I'm not in my usual studios. I'm currently at Myrtle Beach right now, so that's why obviously the background is a little bit different, so bear with me on that. But anyway, we have a great race to talk about. The race wasn't, super exciting throughout the entire day, but we got a really good finish, and we had a couple of good battles for the lead in the closing laps of this race as well. But we did have a overtime restart once again. This is the 3 out of 4 races now actually have had overtime restarts, and William Byron has capitalized on 2 of those. That was last week in Las Vegas, and that was this week in Phoenix, where William Byron, Rudy Fugle above the pit box, said, hey, let's get 2 tires. We don't want to get all 4 tires. We want to get 2, which was obviously the correct decision to make. William Byron was able to come out of pit road in the 2nd position, I believe, and on that final restart, it was insane. Let's take a look at it here. You see William Byron takes the green flag. Kyle Larson tries to run him up there, runs him hard, tries to run him up the wall a little bit. William Byron says, oh no, you're not running me in the wall, battles him back, bumps with him. They're door to door there, and then William Byron gets a push from Tyler Reddick in the 45 Toyota, and that's really the winning decision right there. Once William Byron pulled away, nobody was really going to be able to catch William Byron from that point on in the 24 car. So William Byron gets his 2nd win of the season from that point on. But I just want to talk about William Byron for just a second. You see a few other things happen there at the end. Larson lost a few positions. Obviously, Hamlin and Chastain got into it. Blaney was able to come back to 2nd in that final restart as well. But I want to talk about William Byron for just a second, because I think this could really be an outbreak season for the driver of the 24 Chevrolet, because last year he had 2 wins. Both of those came really early. But after that 2nd win that he had in Atlanta, or really after that Darlington race where he got knocked out of the way when he was going for his 3rd win of the season by Logano, Byron really slowed down. He didn't have the speed anymore. He wasn't getting top 5s, wasn't getting top 10s, and that was concerning. And I hope we don't see that again this year going into the second half after he's already got 2 wins, and I don't think we will. I think this could be really an outbreak season for William Byron. This could be the best version of William Byron we've ever seen. We've seen guys like Kyle Petty, guys like many other commentators. I've said it myself. I think William Byron could end up being one of the best drivers, one of the future driver at Hendrick Motorsports coming up, even over a great champion driver like Chase Elliott, even over a great champion driver like Kyle Larson, because William Byron is such a perfect race car driver. He's almost like a to-the-book race car driver. You see very minimal mistakes on pit road. Very, very rarely do you see him spin out by himself, get in a wreck by himself. And it's almost like you never even see him get in a wreck with somebody else. He's really good. He's almost like a perfect driver. And when you give him the race car to win with, he can really excel and get the win. This was obviously not the winning race car today. He was able to get past Kyle Larson, who was probably a little bit better than him all day, and win the race on 2 tires. That also brings up the question about Rudy Fugle. Obviously, those 2 got together at the start of last year. He got 2 wins last year, his first season with 2 wins. And comes out this year, has already got 2 wins in just the first 4 races. And those 2, when they raced together in the Truck Series, went for that Truck Series championship. If it wasn't for a blown engine at the end of the race. I think it was the 2nd to last race in Phoenix when that happened. But today he obviously wins in Phoenix with Rudy Fugle. When those 2 got together, that is a potentially powerhouse duo, because the chemistry is obviously there. They're familiar with each other. They've raced with each other for a long time. Those 2 could be the future of Hendrick Motorsports. Wow, Kyle Larson sitting over there thinking he had 2 in a row and wasn't able to get it. But let's go through the entire top 10 here. Obviously, we just talked about William Byron, but Ryan Blaney, who was probably not a top 5 race car most of the day, was outside of the top 10 for a lot of the race. Fell back at the beginning, but able to come back, capitalize with getting 2 tires on the last pit stop, and capitalize on the overtime restart to get a solid 2nd place finish, which is 2 second place finishes in a row, by the way, for Ryan Blaney. He finished 2nd last November in the championship race to his teammate. So Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, obviously a pretty decent day for him to get up and finish 2nd when that probably wasn't where he should have finished, and probably wouldn't have finished there if it wasn't for the overtime restarts. And you have Tyler Reddick in the 3rd position in the 45 Toyota. Another driver that was started in the back, was able to come up through the field, get into the top 10. and then capitalized on the overtime restart. You saw there where he tried to go for the lead on the high side, just couldn't quite carry the speed all the way to pass William Byron in the 24 car with the amount of laps left, but he was able to capitalize by passing a bunch of cars on the high side there on the final restart. So a solid third place finish for the Toyota of Tyler Reddick. So you have Chevy, Ford, and Toyota as your top three finishing positions. Then we get back to Kyle Larson, and this is heartbreak for Kyle Larson because this is 2 weeks in a row where there's been overtime restarts. Obviously, last week in Vegas, he was leading at the overtime restart, lost on a duel to his teammate with William Byron last week in Vegas, then comes out here today in Phoenix. Another heartbreaking situation, finishes fourth this week, so unable to get a win still, which is really frustrating for Larson. He even said he's getting frustrated. He says he's a little pissed off. So another disappointing loss there by Kyle Larson. And by the way, all Hendrick drivers are showing a lot of speed right now as well as they did last week. Obviously 1, 2, 3, and then all the Hendrick drivers were in the top 10 today. And we'll continue to go through that as well. But we had Kevin Harvick finish fifth in his final Phoenix race. That's not the championship race. His final spring Phoenix race. Kevin Harvick's been the king of the desert for years now. 9 wins at this racetrack. And that's 20 consecutive top 10 finishes for Kevin Harvick in the number 4 car. Definitely an incredible career at Phoenix Raceway. The last time that he didn't finish in the top 10 at Phoenix Raceway was 2013 in the spring race. So Kevin Harvick is still the king of Phoenix, if you ask me, with those consecutive wins, and had a good shot at it today. Kyle Larson was leading this race big at the end of it. Kevin Harvick was able to cut it down on a pit stop at the end, 40-something laps. I think it was 42, 43 laps to go. Kevin Harvick was able to get by Kyle Larson, and it was just coasting to the win from there. And then we had the caution with 11 laps to go. Harrison Burton spins, hits the wall, blows a tire out. Debris goes flying on the track. Had to throw a caution. And that kind of stole Kevin Harvick's win. Like I said, it's all bets are off when you get these overtime restarts, these late race restarts. If you want to question something, I think Harvick would have been better if he had stayed out on 2 tires. Instead of coming down pit road and get all 4, he said in his post-race interview, obviously, that he thinks the 4 tires was the right decision. Obviously, he's going to say that. But I don't know. I think he would have had a better shot if he had to put 2 tires on the car. But, at the same time, it's easy to say now after the race because, during the race, you can't tell. You don't know how many people are going to stay out on 2. You don't know if anybody's going to not pit. You don't know if somebody's going to take 4 right behind you. So it's a difficult call to make. A lot of time the leader ends up getting put in a bad position when you have a really late race caution like that with under 10 laps to go or restart with under 10 laps to go. So a bit frustrating for Kevin Harvick, I'm sure, but at least he's showing speed, and Stewart-Haas Racing is showing speed, which is definitely something I want to talk about a little bit later in the show. I'm going to go through all the finishing orders for Stewart-Haas Racing because they're showing a lot more speed than they have the first few weeks. Christopher Bell is once again your top finishing Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota. They asked this question in the Fox pre-race show. I do remember that, and Christopher Bell, they asked, would he be the top finishing Toyota? I was thinking yes right away because he's been the top finishing Toyota a couple of weeks this season. Once again today at Phoenix, your most consistent Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota. Not your top finishing Toyota, that goes to Tyler Reddick, but your most consistent Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota right now is definitely Christopher Bell in the 20 car. He's trying to excel and prove that he is the top team, that him and Adam Stevens are the top team over at Joe Gibbs Racing. I don't really see how you could argue that they're not. They made the Final Four last year, and obviously they're really strong this year right now. Another top 10 finish for Christopher Bell. Chase Briscoe, once again, last year's Phoenix winner in the spring, takes home a solid 7th place finish, a pretty decent run for Chase Briscoe, turning around his season that has started on an awful note. Not a lot of speed this season, so it's good to see him get back up in the top 10, show a little bit more speed today. Then you have Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was not a top 10 race car most of the day, got a couple of pit road penalties, and was actually outside the top 10 until the final caution, the final overtime restart. Was able to capitalize with the 8th place finish, but got to find some more speed there for Kyle Busch in the 8 car. We thought this was going to be a breakout season, a really good season for Kyle Busch after that Fontana win. A little bit disappointed after the last 2 weeks. Not a lot of speed last week in Las Vegas, and not a lot of speed here today, but we'll see what happens moving forward into Atlanta and Circuit of the Americas upcoming. Another thing about Kyle Busch, got to cut down on the pit road penalties. We had a loose wheel penalty. That's obviously on the pit crew. That's 100% on the pit crew. We haven't got a whole lot of penalties from the pit crew. I think it's the first pit crew penalty that we've received on pit road this season. But that's, I believe, 3 speeding penalties for Kyle Busch. It almost cost him the Daytona 500. Went a lap down in the Daytona 500, had to recover. Then, of course, The Fontana, the race he won, got a pit road speeding penalty, had to recover from that, and then today, another pit road speeding penalty. It's really costing him a lot, and I know it's happening early on in the race, so it obviously happening later on in the race would be worse, but got to cut down on those pit road speeding penalties. He's having to use his stuff up more, coming through the field. He puts himself at a bigger risk of getting caught up in somebody else's wreck. Got to cut down on those pit road speeding penalties. They're really frustrating, and it's like a weekly thing for Kyle Busch. Got to cut down on those if you're the RCR team. If you're Randall Burnett, got to get that figured out. Got to stop getting those consistent pit road speeding penalties. It's ridiculous. Alex Bowman finishes in the 9th position. Another one of your Hendrick drivers was able to get up there, sneak up there, and get a solid top 10 finish. And then Josh Berry, filling in for Chase Elliott, gets a top 10, his first top 10, and only his 4th career start in his 2nd race in a next-gen car. I think that's very impressive for Josh Berry to already be able to overcome. I know he wasn't in the top 10 for most of the day, but he was running inside the top 15 for a majority of this race. Like I said, the overtime restart kind of jumbles everything up a little bit, but he was able to get up there and get a solid top 10 finish. That's really good for him. I think that really showed, when you get put in an opportunity like this, we obviously are all looking forward to seeing Chase back in the race car, but it's always cool to see somebody like Josh Berry, who otherwise, wouldn't be driving a top Chevrolet at Hendrick Motorsports if it wasn't for this situation. And like I said, it's an unfortunate situation for sure, and we're ready to see Elliott get back, but it is exciting to see what Josh Berry is going to be able to do over the next few weeks with this race car in the 10th position. I do want to go through a couple of other finishing orders. I want to talk about Chastain versus Denny Hamlin. You see here, Denny Hamlin slides up the racetrack on the final restart. Both of these guys were fast for a majority of the day, especially Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain was a top 5, top 10 at least race car for most of the race, as he's been really fast all season long. Ross Chastain has. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get a few wins in the upcoming weeks, but got caught up in it with Denny Hamlin once again. Those two are together every time, and I said most of the time when these two tangle that Ross Chastain finishes above Denny Hamlin. Well, for you Denny Hamlin fans, you finally got a win, because Ross Chastain finished 24th in this race and Denny Hamlin finished 23rd. So back-to-back finishes again for the 11 and the 1 car, but this time it finally goes to Denny Hamlin in the 11. So good for him. Denny Hamlin finally beats Ross Chastain. I do want to talk a little bit about Stewart-Haas Racing. Just go through the results real quick. I obviously said Harvick was 5th, Chase Briscoe was 7th, but Ryan Preece, who'd had a lot of bad luck at the start of this season, ended up finishing in the 12th position. He had Eric Almirola, who just had a wheel completely fall off. Got a penalty for that. The lug nut came off. The entire assembly seemed like it came off on that race car, so he finishes 33rd. But Stewart-Haas Racing showed a lot more speed today than we'd seen the rest of this season. We have not seen a whole lot of speed from the Stewart-Haas Racing organization in 2023 until today, outside of Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick's been fast all year, but Chase Briscoe has shown no speed, was a 25th place race car last week in Las Vegas, comes out today, finishes 7th. Ryan Preece keeps getting caught up in wrecks, not the fastest race cars, gets a solid 12th place finish today. And then, of course, Eric Almirola was showing a little bit more speed, but he's had a rough couple of seasons. Just good to see the SHR team showing a little bit more speed here. Coming to Phoenix Raceway, so it's good to see as well. So we did have a new aero package today, and I did want to just mention that. I think the racing was a lot better. I know we had some drivers that were dominant of the race. Kevin Harvick pulled away, Kyle Larson pulled away at the very beginning, William Byron pulled away. But one thing that I want to note is there was a lot of passing throughout the field with this package, and there was not a lot of dirty air to say. It wasn't the reason that Larson led a whole bunch of the laps was not dirty air. It wasn't because all the cars were stalling out. It was just because he was simply better than everybody else, which was kind of the same thing last week with the Hendrick cars. And then the same thing this week. Just the Hendrick cars are just better than everybody else. So I'm glad to see that it's not dirty air, and I hope we can continue to use this package. It's definitely an improvement from what we had. I think most fans can agree on that. So we do go to Atlanta next week. That'll be some sort of a pack race that we now have at Atlanta. So obviously, I hope you guys enjoy that. And of course, obviously tune in to Dirty Air next week following NASCAR in Atlanta. If you like the video, like and subscribe. And of course, let's get rowdy.